Hi again. Our first session goes deep into the global landscape of green hydrogen projects. It explores where large-scale developments are happening, how they are being executed, and when can we actually expect real-world impacts. To share expertise, we have Mr. Guranchal Singh, Head of Research India, Argus. If you could. And we'll be waiting a little for Mr. Vipul Garg, who's a Senior Specialist, Hydrogen Ammonia Pricing Assessment, S&P Global Platts. Let's hear from Mr. Guranchal.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much. Yeah, hi, good morning once again. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nishant, for giving me the opportunity. It's always difficult to go first when, as we have such a beautiful lineup lined up for the day. But for this particular session, what I'll try to do is I'll try to sum up the entire developments which have happened in the green hydrogen, or I would say the hydrogen space, because blue hydrogen seems to be also in the order for the next 10 to 15 minutes. When Nishant reached out to me to basically do a global roundup, it felt like a huge task, because what you will see here is basically a roundup of what has happened in this particular space in the last 3 to 4 months. This sector is extremely dynamic, as you are all aware, and there's a lot of things which are happening. So I'd like to try and sum up everything within the next 15 minutes and give you a context. So starting with that, the first thing which I'll probably like to start up would be from the Global Hydrogen Review, which came up in October 2024. Global Hydrogen Review was more of a mixed bag. The Global Hydrogen Review was basically where we came to understand that it will take some time still for the hydrogen to reach less than maybe $1 per or $2 per kilograms. It was an eye-opener in terms of understanding that the overall cost of hydrogen would continue to remain high at least till 2030, and the electrolyzer costs are yet to come down. Although we did see in China, as I'll be covering when I reach there, the electrolyzer kit costs reducing to a significant level. The other important thing which we did witness is that while the FIDs, as far as in a comparison from 2023 to 2024, doubled during this particular duration to 3.4 million tons per year, almost 50% of them was actually blue hydrogen rather than only green hydrogen, which actually took up around 1.9 million tons of this, but it was more significant. Having said that, when we are looking at towards from a net zero perspective, the idea is that there's still almost 9 million tons which we are looking at, which will continue to be more than $4 per kilogram. Does that sound alarm bells across the world, where we have seen so many projects announced, but FIDs being rare is what we have to see. I'll probably move on to the sumo wrestler of the world. Sorry for my understanding of the sumo wrestler, but that's what exactly the words which were used by the US spokesperson yesterday when Donald Trump decided to put on the tariffs on the world and go golfing in his Florida golf course. It's quite funny that US has been actually driving the world, and they have been. It's not that US has been the consumer for the world throughout, and that is what we can see in that particular context. But talking about the sumo wrestler in the world, the entire world is questioning 45V, 45Q, what happens, when will it happen, what is going on. But I'd like probably take a step back and look at that. Is Donald Trump the one person who's responsible for having hydrogen not progressing in US? Is that the context? Not so much. 2022 was when we saw 45V and 45Q being coined. The IRA came at that point of time, but it took 2 years for them to actually come out with a definition. A huge gap, which basically saw a lot of FIDs getting delayed. We will be talking about its impact in the next subsequent slide. But yes, that is something which we really need to look at. The other thing which we see when Donald Trump has come in is probably, yes, the future is in jeopardy. We had that $7 billion investment where we saw the 7 green hydrogen hubs which were expected to come up. Argus has been on our top of this, and we have understood that it's going to be very political as we go forward, because out of the 7, only probably 3 are in the keep, which are effectively in the Republican states, although the Republican senators have actually written it to the US Congress that they would probably like to keep one of the Democratic Pacific Northwest hydrogen hub continues. Not all is lost in US, to be honest, because the states, given that they have the power, continue to focus on hydrogen, with California CTP program working around that side, and plus one of the key elements here, which is the plug power, which actually got a loan guarantee of $1.7 billion. Importantly, Plug Power actually did something which was quite interesting, that they actually transferred their federal investment tax credit to an unspecified investor to actually fund their solar and wind projects. So they are online to look into that. But the things are still, going in a very difficult direction. There are positives as well. But one country which actually had a very significant impact on what is going on in US would be Japan. Why do I say Japan? Significant commitment, lot of focus, but they are still dependent on others to give them the green hydrogen context. See, when we look at from a Japan perspective, we do understand that Japan had a lot of projects where under their CFD program, they were planning to bring in a lot of green as well as blue hydrogen going forward. But majority of these projects had investments in two of the major countries, which was US and Australia. Is the world going good on that side? Probably not. Let's just look at what has happened from a US perspective, as I was mentioning. We know that ExxonMobil still, which is basically going to be one of the largest suppliers to Japan under that area, is still looking out for its FID. ExxonMobil is very positive. They actually feel that 45V would continue, and we also kind of have that understanding, because that particular thing is under the federal register, so it will need the Congress to actually change it. But you never know. The directives from Donald Trump just don't stop coming in. Over and from the perspective of what is happening down under, Australia, which was actually the golden goose in 2019, one of the major areas where it started off, has seen things falling apart. Having said that, the focus on infrastructure, which Japan was looking at, is also drying out, and there are significant issues on that particular side as well. But Japan continues to at least provide a policy support. After the CFD, which is for the hydrogen production, they have already come out with applications where they want transport infrastructure. Incrementally, they are calling for applications to set up ports. Japan still is dependent on US, Australia, maybe going forward, obviously India, to provide them with the hydrogen, considering their targets. But they are not, I would not say they are no longer in the dream. They do understand under their 7th Energy Plan that they might not achieve their expected target of 73% of GHG rejection. They have taken out two major things. One, they've gone for a worst case scenario where they say that probably the primary energy supply will still have the fossil fuels for 67%. And secondly, they did delete the paragraph which said that they would probably have a good collaboration with US. Probably Japan sees something which we're still positive on. Moving on to down under, Australia. I couldn't sum up the story better, that they started well, they played a lot of catch up, which happened over the last two, but things are not going well. When I was working around on Australia, I was actually running short of the number of projects which were actually struggling in that particular case. Australia does have a Head Start program. A kind of a news probably something which you're already aware of. $4 billion of Australian dollars for this program. 6 proposals were given out for almost $2 billion. Majority of them stand paused or cancelled. On the right-hand side of my slide, basically gives you a sense, give you a sense of how things have been. The governments are actually diverting money from some of the significant flagship projects to look at the overall perspective. Incrementally, what is happening in Australia is that Australia is also due for elections in May. The current Prime Minister states that they will continue for hydrogen investment. The new government has come out and said that probably not so much. They might reduce the overall investment. Not a very good news for the overall green hydrogen, because Australia actually was expected to become one of the leaders for renewable energy production and produce green hydrogen. But they are actually also now more focusing on blue hydrogen as we go forward. I'll probably like to come back to Asia, because there's one more country which we'd like to focus on, which has been actually at the forefront in terms of the policy, which is South Korea. South Korea never had the idea of, green or blue. They were very clear it was going to be clean hydrogen. They were going to use ammonia bunkering as one of the significant fuels, and they were actually looking at that. But they also had their share of failures. We did see South Korea's clean hydrogen, excuse me, clean hydrogen power generation bidding market. No responses coming from, except for maybe one government utility. Lot of things to look at. One of the significant things was obviously the exchange rate, quite important, but yes, relevant. Some of the very important areas, because ammonia, when it's gonna be traded, is gonna be valued in dollars, and majority of their projects, they had to bid in Korean won. So, and there was no process of hedging. So other than that, there was there, but they continue to focus on. What is very significant about South Korea is that they are focusing on hydrogen consumption, and they are gonna go around with that. It is among one of the most important countries where they have, where they have significant transport sector targets. They are actually looking at hydrogen fueled cars, buses and taxis, and plus, even recently, as recent as last month, they actually increased the hydrogen fuel use subsidy to almost $3.5 per kilogram. Which brings me, with this particular context, which brings me to the raging warrior, the European Union. You know, whenever I look at European Union, there's sometimes I just feel that probably they are the only ones who are worried about global climate change. Or is it that they genuinely feel that if we don't have people enough to live, there will be no world or no economies to look at? But yes, definitely European Union has been at the policy forefront. I cannot even, if I start the forum here with the type of policies they have, the type of changes which are going on, the low carbon hydrogen definition which we'll see in May, I'll probably hear speaking till tomorrow morning. Something like the senator who spoke for 26 hours and just broke a record when he was trying to, go against Donald Trump. Nothing happened. Donald Trump is happily playing golf at his golf course. But anyways, things might not be that great for European Union as well. They are getting their reality checks. While we do see, as we see in this particular chart, they continue to have a significant amount of electrolyzer capacity addition targets. We do see there has been some revisions, France being the most notable and the significant one, where they have actually cut down by almost 1.5 to 2 gigawatts of their electrolyzer capacity targets. Which brings me to what is actually going on in RED 3. When I talk about RED 3, we have 21st May as the transposition deadline. Any of the countries which is there, not so much. Finland, probably yes. Germany, having done so much, they are looking at CCFDs, to be honest, for their programs. There's Hydrogen Global, H2 Global Scheme, which we'll be talking about in some time. Subsidies to steel producers. But are they ready for the transposition? Not there. Netherlands is talking about a phased approach. I loved what Spain said when they were asked about the RED 3 transposition. They said there's a lot of homework which they have to do before it goes on. It feels like going back to the school. As I talked about Finnish government, Czech Republic, there are a lot of quotas which are being focused upon, and there is the strategy. But 21st May does not seem like it. And if that is not going to be the case, we might be seeing them missing their own targets. Then I'd like to also move on to the overall focus. So as we say, since the context is about how have the projects been going on, or what are the things which are happening in particular case, I'd like to draw your attention that what are the two major areas where we are actually seeing some progress. I won't say progress because one of them hasn't progressed, to be honest, but refinery has been one of the key areas. And I think that we have seen in India as well. Majority of the hydrogen projects which have been bid out are in the refineries. Maybe the refinery route process of using, getting the credits for using hydrogen to produce transport fuels is helping that on that particular side. But having said that, refineries continue to be the major focus here. I'd also like to point out here that this is something which is we do at Argus, where we try and draw out what is the break-even point where the hydrogen, the clean hydrogen or the green hydrogen would become at parity in terms of the overall hydrogen going forward, which is presently being used. And that is what we call as the break-even point. And as you can see, the break-even point seems to be pretty much in order, provided there is a significant implementation of the ETS, which we look at, and which was basically where I was trying to showcase the impact of CBAM when we were looking at the previous slide. Sorry. When we were talking at the previous slide about how the free allowances would, how the removal of free allowances would actually got the cost to go up. The reason why this particular cost would obviously be important is because the European Union's target for meeting their overall hydrogen is actually bringing in around 50% of that from imports, which, as we know from a perspective, is going to be green ammonia. I would like to now draw attention to the second set of projects, eSAF. The world's going crazy over that. There are significant more projects. We are expecting 25 million tons of demand by 2045, and that too overall in a globe. But do you think eSAF's actually happening? eSAF has approximately less than 30,000 tons of capacity right now. We are aware that the H2 Global tried to do a tender which had to be cancelled because there was not enough credits in terms of producing this particular eSAF, which we'll talk about. But eSAF is going to be one of the key focuses. Amongst the three policies which we know, which are the three pillars for the entire European Union, the RE-fuel, which is basically from the aviation side, we are going to witness the importance of SAF as well as eSAF going forward. Quickly jumping on to how things are going on in terms of the hydrogen bank auctions, the global tenders, as well as the FIDs. As I said, the Europe will not back down. We are witnessing, as I said, the Spain continues to do its homework, but the allocations are significant. In the last 2 weeks, it has already allocated around 1.2 billion euros to trigger FIDs, alongside with the other public fundings which are going on. One significant thing which I'd like to point out here in the overall tenders is how the second auction witnessed almost half the number of bids which happened for the hydrogen bank, which is primarily focused towards setting up the plants within the EU, and that was majorly because there was a limitation on the Chinese electrolyzer stack. European Union is basically more focused on getting 40% of the electrolyzers getting deployed from within EU, but then there is now a focus on 25% for the Chinese electrolyzer stacks, which has actually impacted the overall policy. We are still to witness this particular results. And on the H2 Global side, we have the second round underway. There is a significant amount of focus which is going on. Some of the discussions which are presently underway in India, Japan, Korea, and obviously there are tenders from Canada and Australia. Quickly moving on to the overall infrastructure. I don't want to be ringing the alarm bells, but probably the last 6 months have not been very kind on this particular sector, because if I go through all the news articles, it's always been this has paused, this is not going on. So that has been something which has been very difficult. Just one of the news which came day before yesterday was Enertrag basically had to cut down on their 130 megawatt electrolyzer plant because the pipelines were not there. Having said that, significant amount of green ammonia, or I would say ammonia import infrastructure in line, but things are not moving in that particular direction. Which brings me to what is the overall mandate demand in these 3-4 countries. In an overall context, this particular slide talks about some of the 3-4 nations which we would witness as coming in the demand, and this is majorly from a policy side. We are looking at Japan, Korea, EU27 for aviation and maritime. I did a split there. We have the sessions on maritime going forward. So those are the 2 areas where we'll have global impacts which are coming in. But these are, again, policy-related demands. And I don't come bearing good news on that particular side here as well. The European Commission simply said that while they have a 20 million ton target for 2030, they might not see more than 6 to 7 million tons, considering the policy, the investment, and somehow we try and blame everything to Donald Trump, but yes, Donald Trump. So that has been the case, which I would like to come now to the reason why Europe might also slow down. China. China balances the world, right? China basically looks at every commodity. They'll produce it, they'll consume it. What interesting I'd like to point out here is that, how has the electrolyzer costs basically fluctuated? For a non-Chinese system versus a Chinese kit, the electrolyzer cost has been quite significantly low. So keeping them out of the context might bring us difficulties as we go forward. China has been also positive in terms of some of the news which have come out in the last 3 months, I would say. CEEC continues to come out with the tenders, and there is a focus. Sungrow has been focusing on quite a significant projects as far as Canada is concerned. And Zhuangling as well as Sungrow are partnering Acme in their Oman project. There are hiccups, obviously. Bright spots cannot be always that bright. Go for Hydrogen is basically looking at problems in their financial performance. I'd probably conclude in an overall sense to talk about how the world is thinking other than these particular areas. And there I'd like to mention 3 major nations. One is Singapore, the leader, as we say, for the clean space in overall sense. They have allocated more 5 billion Singapore dollars again, but they're not focusing on hydrogen, even though they were amongst one of the first ones to actually come out with the policy. Saudi and Middle East has been quite vocal that things are not that great. Masdar, Saudi Aramco, even EDF's chief has come out and said that there really needs to be a reality check in terms of the projects, in terms of the overall area. I'd like to conclude with probably something which might lead up to the next Australia, which is Brazil. Because COP30 is happening, so Brazil does have to focus on those particular areas. Brazil continues to have a lot of projects coming in. Almost 40 projects have been announced. How many FIDs? 1. And not much in sight. But the country continues to focus on, there has been significant investments. They have formed a $100 billion Brazil Invest, Abu Dhabi Investment Group Fund. There is a $1 billion World Bank Climate Investment Fund. So the funds are flowing in, and probably with the world dynamic shifting, we might see a focus there. However, FIDs still elude the world. Overall, I can just conclude that from a demand as well as from a supply side, the focus is shifting a bit, as we can see that there is focus on, as we'll see probably next week when the low carbon hydrogen definition in EU might witness coming in of pink hydrogen as well. For a green hydrogen, people are coming to a reality check, and I like to close with the quote which we got from actually TechNip in one of the recent conferences, where they suggested and came out that it is not always the Donald Trump problem. People were ready to jump on the bandwagon very soon, but they realized that the cost for hydrogen was not only an electrolyzer cost or the production cost. You have to transport it, you have to use it. And that is when they realized that now they have people who have come out and said that they would like to go for an additive cost to reduce carbon emissions, where they can put the stack subsequently rather than now, which might not actually meet the targets, because I'm not a technical expert, but what they quoted was that that will only cut down 70% of the emissions against most of the nation's targets of 90%. Thank you so much. I'll have Nishant come in and take over
Guranchal,
this.
if you could just stay back there for any questions. I know that was very extensive and a lot of data points, but a lot of y'all here I know have interest in these markets. So anyone has any questions for Guranchal, or should we move on to what's happening in India?
Yes, sir. Sorry.
There were 2-3 projects you showed about BP and Shell.
Yes, sir. I'll just go back.
At the same time, we hear BP Shell going slow on green policies and green investments and all. So is it going to happen, these projects, or what is going to? So,
sir, I'll just, thank you for that question firstly. I had that in that. I'll just probably highlight based on this thing's news. BP around in 2022, if I'm not wrong, or sorry, you'd like to answer that question? Yes. Oh, sure, please. Thank you so much.
So it's Christoph Norris from ThyssenKrupp nucera. As you just asked regarding Shell, so I'm not Shell, but I'm ThyssenKrupp nucera, and we are delivering the electrolyzers for the Holland Hydrogen 1 project. So I can tell you the project is going on, and there will be a mechanical completion this year, and I think they will start up either this year or next year. Yeah. So it's a real project, it's ongoing. Yeah.
Sir, I'll just like to add here. So you're right in understanding that BP had announced more than 18 projects. Right now, they have scaled it down, which is true. They have come down to 6, but these are amongst those 6. So as I said, when I said that refineries continue to be the focus area, that is true for across the world, majorly India and European Union. Those projects continue to be there because there's a focus on the refinery route where you are getting credit for using hydrogen to produce the transport fuels, where you can still get the tickets going on. But other than that, yes, they have across the world, they have rolled down even in, as you can see, some of their projects in Australia and all. The other renewable hydrogen projects probably are basically on a roll down basis. There is a slowdown, but yes, refineries continue to lead the way.
Thanks, Guranchal.
And thank you for your...
Yes, Harish.
Sorry. Yeah.
I had a question on Korea. There was a slide on Korea earlier in this deck. And I saw some projections for 2030. I could see a split of, a fourth coming from green and 3/4 coming from blue. Is this an anticipation or something you heard from the Korean authorities?
So, sir, this is actually their policy targets. I have from a Korea perspective, as I said, Japan and Korea have been really strong on policy. They are very clear that they will be the consumers of the world because they have been like that forever. But right now, even their own tenders are not being very positive, because the only thing which I would say only focus has been co-blending, where, as you can see, the hydrogen, when I say clean hydrogen power generation bidding market, their target is to blend approximately 20% of ammonia in the co-firing, clean ammonia in the co-firing. The project which we are talking about here, the COSPO project, that has actually got the FID and is going ahead. They're getting the clean ammonia from Egypt and all. But they did miss out on almost 5,750 gigawatts or 5.7 terawatts of this thing. So they are really focused on this. They want to achieve this particular target, and they are focusing on at least using transport as one of the key areas and on the power side. These are their focus. They want to achieve that. How much it is something which we'll have to see, considering things are not very much positive right now on the cost side and also on the production. Korea has been honest from very beginning. They've been very clear that they will or are okay to go ahead with the blue hydrogen as well. They are not they're defining it as clean rather than green hydrogen.
Wonderful. Guranchal, thank you very much.
Thank you.
A round of applause for Guranchal, please.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks once again, Mr. Guranchal. I'd now like to invite Mr. Vipul Garg, Senior Specialist, Hydrogen Ammonia Pricing Assessment, S&P Global Platts.
So I just move from here? Okay. Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me all right. Thank you. So I'll start with this beautiful infographic that we have prepared in mid-March, and what this basically shows. And by the way, this is available on our Platts website for free, so you don't have to really subscribe to get access to this map. But what this map actually shows, if you look at the right-hand side, it shows the hydrogen hubs, which has to be one of the things that leads to a hydrogen economy development. And other than the hydrogen development, there are also demand sectors, mainly refineries and fertilizers. So these are also marked on this map, and you can see by the size of these circles how much demand might come from which of these sectors and which of the refineries and which of the fertilizers. And also mapped on in hexagonal forms are the major projects that are planning to either export ammonia or even domestic use of hydrogen. So other than the map, let's look at the left-hand side, which are two graphs which shows basically a comparison between the offer levels versus the willingness to pay, because there has been a major gap between the cost of production of hydrogen and ammonia itself, when I'm talking about green, and the willingness to pay from the existing, especially from the existing sectors. So if you talk about ammonia, fertilizer is an existing sector, and if you talk about hydrogen, refinery is seen as an existing sector. So if you look at these willingness to pay versus offers comparison, green ammonia offer prices, FOB India, has been around $800. We have seen offer levels below that, above that, but on an average, on a median basis, it's somewhere around $800, right? But where's the willingness to pay? When we talk to the buyer side, they say, we are paying $400 for gray ammonia. Why should we pay more than that? And that's where, support schemes like H2 Global, the tenders like H2 Global come in. They are saying that we'll fund the gap. Because of this factor, so it's not just about India, it's a global scenario that there is a gap between willingness to pay and offer levels. And you look at similar trend for green hydrogen. So more or less the offer levels, the cost of production has been there are two bases for that. One is the large scale basis. So if let's say the demand is like 60 KTPA, 70 KTPA, and another is the refinery tenders that have been coming out like 5 KTPA, 10 KTPA, right? So for the 5, 10 KTPA, which are small scale captive plants, the cost of production have been somewhere around $5. But for large scale offers, for large scale plants, the offer levels have been somewhere around $3. And all of these are indicative. So because there is no large scale supply yet, but there are some indicative offers from the market because they are also offering these to the refineries. And when we talk to the refineries, they're saying again, $2 is what they're paying for gray. So why should they pay any more than that? But there is a push from the government, so we can pay 50 cents more, not more than that. So there's less and less willingness to pay, but the reality is hydrogen has been expensive. And this is the list of the offtake agreements from India point of view. And again, offtake agreements are a good thing, but what's the concern here? If you look at the last column, that's the concern, non-binding. Everything is non-binding, and you can see AM Green has the largest list of offtake agreements, but again, all of them are non-binding, and I think based on the volume that has been offtaken, they have taken FID, but others are facing the same struggle. Their projects should advance, but non-binding agreements are a hurdle. Again, an infographic that we prepared in 2024 to show the global offtake scenario, and you can see a lot of lines going out of India and going to Northwest Europe, going to Asian region, and coming out of Middle East, Australia, even South America, US, Canada. So this was the situation back in 2024 when we were tracking offtake agreements, and we realized that there is a big drop in offtake agreements since 2023. If you look at the graph on the right-hand side, there's a clear distinction between, non-binding offtake agreements have been significantly more than binding ones. But the main concern was the drop in 2024, and we have seen, this was mid-year, but towards the end of the year also the picture was not too rosy, as to say. And where was this demand coming from? Mostly from power sector, so we can assume that it was mainly from Japan and Korea, because they have said that we are going to use ammonia, clean ammonia, for power generation. Again, this map also is available on our Platts website. Now, these are some borrowed slides because I am from the pricing team, but so we don't have a crystal ball. We don't do forecasts and everything. But we do track projects, and based on that, you can see the blue line in 2021. That's dormant projects, and so projects announced in 2021, 2022 are to an extent dormant now, and there are not many projects that are advancing, and this might be the same status so we have decided that if the announced date is 3 years back and there is no progress in the project, we would announce it as a dormant project, right? So even in 2022, the 2022 announced projects, 90 gigawatt of the capacity might go dormant if the status remains as is. And majorly, this can be attributed to, there was some regulation clarity, but the European Hydrogen Bank, there were a lot of expectations attached to it, but there was a lot of competitive bidding, so to say. And while the support was expected to be 4.5 euros, it was only around 50 euro cents. So that was a major setback for the hydrogen economy. And I mean, yeah, there are other tenders. The Korea tender didn't pick up, Australian, there is a lot of negative sentiment in Australian projects. People say that, Australia was never going to pick up as expected. And so is the case with others. But yeah, I mean, this is the clear picture. Looking at, again, how have other projects which are progressing, how have they progressed? So there has been a 50% growth in operational projects dominated by China. Under construction projects have been up by 125% from last year, again dominated by China. And then projects reaching FID. So in case of FID, it has been more or less a shared scenario where, mostly all of the projects, I mean, it's not happening in one single region. Like it's happening in, under construction projects and operational projects are only in China, so it's not the same situation for FID, which is mostly driven by regulations, support schemes, and everything. And advanced planning as well. So advanced planning would be if the project has taken FEED or is searching for certain partnerships, getting approvals. So that is the definition of advanced planning for us. Now the Indian scenario again, if you compare India with the rest of Asia, you look at those purple blocks, which are again China. So there is a huge competition from China, but India is expected to grow, especially after 2030. I'll give some time to this slide so that you can take pictures, although you might, if you reach out to me, I'll provide the slides. Now coming to pricing, and so what constitutes the pricing? We have seen basically three components. One is the cost of production. When you talk to the producer's side, they say, okay, we have such capex, even for blue. They're saying that there's high capex, so we need to get the cost of production back. That's how the initial stages of hydrogen look like, at least. So cost of production from the producer side. The buyer side, they're saying that, okay, we are already paying so much for gray hydrogen, gray ammonia, and we do not have any motivation to pay more. So there is a willingness to pay from their side, of course. This will be negotiated, and they'll decide. They might decide somewhere in between, but there is a willingness to pay. And what is pushing the hydrogen economy is basically the emissions. So the emissions saving premium, this benefit that green hydrogen provides or blue hydrogen provides is basically what everybody agrees on. So if we talk to the producers and buyers, they consider green hydrogen as a premium product. They just are not sure how much the premium should be. And this is a very general slide on how our prices are getting used in other commodities, and this might happen the same for hydrogen as well. I'll move over to the next one. These are our hydrogen and ammonia assessments. I'll quickly run you through these ones, and they can't be more market-based assessments, although we would like to have more market-based assessments. But in the form of hydrogen market-based assessment, we only have the pump prices, and those are also gray hydrogen, not green. They are starting to turn green, but they're not there yet. And then in the form of model-based assessments, we launched them in 2019. We had the cost valuations, which were divided by technology. So we had alkaline PEM electrolyzers based, SMR based, ATR, coal gasification, all these technology based hydrogen costs. And then recently, last year, we launched regulations compliant, because Europe is much more advanced as compared to others, at least in terms of regulations and the hydrogen definition itself. So we launched something called the RFNBO compliant hydrogen in Europe. I'll show you the volatility in those prices. So we are assuming spot prices. And in terms of ammonia, we have, again, market-based, we already have the Ferticon gray ammonia assessments. And then we have something called the JCAP, which is Japan Korea Low Carbon Ammonia Marker. We have tried to make it market-based, although there is no market, so we are receiving indications from where the buyers want to buy low carbon ammonia at, and where are the sellers offering at. And in model-based, we have blue ammonia premiums, which are added on top of the market-based gray ammonia assessments. And then we have the green ammonia assessments, which are also model-based. Coming to the hydrogen pricing and indications, let's look at the interesting scenario first, which is California pump prices, hydrogen refueling station prices, which are currently sitting at $35 per kilogram. Even though we have seen German and Japanese pump station prices below $15. And that is because of the supply concerns, and Shell even shut down 7 of their stations in California because of this scenario. And this basically shows that hydrogen market for light duty vehicles is not too great, although people are exploring hydrogen implementation in heavy duty vehicles. Now this is the RFNBO compliant hydrogen I was talking about. So more or less it's somewhere around 8 to 9 euros if you consider it on a spot basis. On long-term 15, 20 years contract, yeah, I mean, Spain, Portugal, they might be offering at 5, 6 euros. But if you look at the volatility of the power prices of the intermittency of the renewables, solar and wind, you realize that green hydrogen, especially if you are going to meet RFNBO requirements, it's not going to be cheap. And on the right hand side you can see the willingness to pay. And willingness to pay, although it's aviation might pay the highest for green hydrogen, but they are looking more towards bioliquids. And the major use cases for green hydrogen currently are existing use cases, refinery, ammonia, but they don't have the willingness to pay. Again, comparing the willingness to pay versus cost of production numbers, and you can see the Middle East is somewhere around $5 to $6. Australia is 5 to 7, and what's interesting, especially in the case of Australia, is when you consider only the cost of production, the cost is somewhere around 5 to 7. But when you consider other costs, you increase. You have to consider compression, you have to consider balance of plant and everything. Your cost can reach up to $16 per kilogram, depending on what's the scale of your plant. But at the same time, willingness to pay from the industry has been around $2.5. And India again sits at around $3.5 to $5. If you consider the willingness to pay, it's like maximum 3.5, but the cost of production has been on an average around $5 per kilogram. And you'll see the actual trend in the refinery tenders when the results come out. And again, from the steel making, which is also seen as a major demand center for, especially in terms of volume, for green hydrogen. We talked to a Japanese steelmaker, and their willingness to pay was somewhere around 50 cents, which for most of you, it would not make sense, but that's the reality. The steel sector doesn't want to pay any more than 50 cents for green hydrogen. Coming to ammonia pricing graphs. So this is again available on our Platts website. This is a comparison between gray, blue, and green. Where does it sit? On paper, yeah. If you look at the definition, if you do not consider the sequestration costs, blue ammonia is not much expensive as compared to gray, but if you consider the sequestration cost, then your costs significantly go up. And green ammonia has been in the range of around $900 to $1,000 if you consider delivery into Northwest Europe and Far East. Now this is, again, we continue to talk to the market, and we collect these numbers. And if you look at, again, India here on the left-hand side, it is the indication for green ammonia. And India has been in very tight competition with other regions in terms of offers, although, yeah, Middle East has lower offers because of the cost of investment there is very low. And the renewable mix itself is very competitive as compared to India. And yeah, I mean, this is the scenario. But again, you see the gap between willingness to pay and FOB offers. Again, there is a gap. And there is also one more gap. While Asian buyers are willing to sign a contract for like 15 years, Europe hasn't been so generous. Europe, the scenario is quite different. Europe wants a contract of less than 10 years because of the uncertainty that, what would happen to all of us. I mean, it's not just Platts or any other PRAs or any other company which is forecasting hydrogen costs to come down, And because of these forecasts, the buyers have a concern that if hydrogen costs are coming down in the near future, why should we sign a contract for 15 years on a fixed cost? So that has been a major concern, and the producers and buyers need to sit together and sort it out, as to when the cost would come down actually, and that is with the adoption of green hydrogen. And same is the case with and you can see the H2 Global was closed at 1,000 euros, which is somewhere around $1,100. And Korean auction was closed at approximately $600, although I'll talk about the Korean auction later on. So some quick market updates, and since the bell has already rung, I'll try to quick things up. And again, H2 Global has come out with the second auction. The problem that remains is third-party access at terminals, because that was one of the major problems that, especially the new entrants into this market, because all entrants already, existing ammonia users, producers already have their storages figured out at the destination port. But the new entrants, they were quoted like, I heard that, usually, so Fertiglobe was paying, I think, around 70 euros per metric ton for port infrastructure costs and terminal costs and everything. But the new entrants, which were from India, I would not like to name them, but yeah, they were from India and they know who they are. And so they were quoted somewhere around $250 to $300 per metric ton, for the same thing, for the same ammonia storage that Fertiglobe might have paid around 70 euros per metric ton. So this problem still remains, and producers are trying to enter partnerships to sort this problem out. Now, one more key topic is the ammonia crackers. So currently the market is figuring out, because there is hydrogen demand in Europe, if you're supplying ammonia to Europe, how do you get it back to hydrogen? You crack it. So there is a clever mix of gas and ammonia that you have to use for the cracking requirements, so that you're also able to remain below the carbon intensity threshold, but also take care of the cost, because gas is cheaper, but it will increase your carbon intensity. Coming to Korea now, as I said, Korea closed at around $600 per metric ton, and Aramco is said to be still negotiating with COSPO for the supply of around 300,000 metric tons of blue ammonia, and the capture rate is around 97% using post-combustion capture. So the major problem with Korea, a lot of people applied a lot of people held themselves back because the conditions were seen to be too strict because of especially the risks that were involved. I'll not get into the risk because of the time constraint, but yeah, there were certain risks involved, and due to that, a lot of people held back from applying for the tender, but people who applied also didn't qualify because of an undisclosed price cap, which was around 500 Korean won, and we translated it to somewhere around $640 per metric ton of ammonia, and even most of blue ammonia couldn't get through. Now, for the Japanese tender, again, the similar problems that Korea tender faced, but fortunately, there is no price gap, but the price is too high, because of, again, the risks involved, and then there is a Panama risk as well. So producers are figuring out, should we also consider the Cape of Good Hope route, and also the Henry Hub prices have gone up. So because of this, we are hearing that blue and green offers have been really comparable for this particular tender, which closed on March 31st. So blue offers were heard somewhere around $850 per metric ton CFR Japan, and similarly green were heard somewhere around $870. So very comparable, which was not expected though. And on the right hand side, you can see the graph where we are comparing the spreads between ammonia and coal for low carbon ammonia versus green ammonia. So green ammonia spreads are just double, again on paper. So what is needed in this market? First of all, pricing, and the common pricing needs to be figured out, and then there is the ammonia cracker economics. The producers, buyers, terminal owners, all these people need to sit down and figure out how can we reduce the cracking cost, because the efficiency is not too great when it comes to ammonia. And infrastructure developments, they need to take place, but again, it's a chicken and egg situation. When somebody thinks about infrastructure development, they think, okay, how many projects are proceeding to FID, and how many projects are going to come online? So this is what needs to come out, and hydrogen is expensive, so how do you need a technological breakthrough to bring down the cost, or can you do something about the power costs? And again, price indexation. For blue, it's comparatively easy, because you can simply say that, okay, gray, we already have a gray market, let's index it to that. But green has been slightly difficult, because there is a huge gap between willingness to pay and cost of production. And again, certification. There is, of course, no harmonization on certifications, on the hydrogen definitions worldwide. Japan has different, Korea has different, India has different, Europe has a different definition. So either that needs to be figured out, or the certifications need to define clearly as to what needs to be done. Thank you. These are my contacts, and please reach out.
Thanks, Vipul. Anyone has questions for Vipul? No? Just one? Okay, we'll just take one there. Perhaps if someone can get the mic across, or if you can be loud enough, sir.
Covering various aspects of hydrogen economy, especially focusing on India. You touched upon hydrogen being transported, and for that, focusing on ammonia cracking technology going forward. Is S&P also evaluating LOHC as an alternative for hydrogen transportation? And where you see LOHC playing part in India? Thank you.
See, these are all the technologies, methyl cyclohexane and liquid hydrogen. All of these things are currently at pilot stage only, And the reality is that currently ammonia is the cheapest alternative. If you look at a hydrogen vector, ammonia currently looks like a best way to decarbonize, and the cheapest way to decarbonize. So LOHC, sits somewhere there, but there has not been significant developments in that region. Liquid hydrogen, I would say, is more advanced as compared to LOHC from what we have witnessed. Because liquid hydrogen, it's just the capex that is high, but transporting liquid hydrogen is comparatively easy. So that has been the development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vipul.